knew I was going to be an artist, so that was never a mystery to anybody who knew me well. But I didn't really know how to do that, so one of the strategies was to become an illustrator. So that's what I pursued. The first 15 years of my career were spent in freelance illustration. And then around 2000, I switched over to doing fine art color woodcuts. And then that eventually evolved into oil painting. My style evolved really organically. I didn't really know how to proceed forward except to follow my gifts. One of the first things I did in art school that really worked for me was woodcut. So I just pursued that until, I decided I'd explored that enough in my career. I was fairly ready to move on, but it did prepare me for how I paint. I feel like using the knives was really a good analogy to, or a correlation to, the palette knife. Kind of an element of chaos also with the way I paint that's evident and has to exist in a woodcut. I always was drawn to landscapes. The first time I knew I was eventually going to be a landscape painter was when I worked building the Pacific Crest Trail in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness area up in Washington. And the beauty of the scenery there is just so awe-inspiring, so overpowering that I knew it's where I'd end up. As an illustrator, I almost by necessity had to deal with the human figure on a daily basis. The fascination of landscape, pure landscape, just became more and more of an obsession. And I just became more and more in love with the beauty of the natural landscape. I didn't have the gift of painting to the same degree that I had the gift of woodcut, so I had to really work very hard to learn to be a painter. Although, like I say, some just raw drawing skills and composition, that sort of thing, they did transfer from the woodcuts over to the painting, but the act of actually putting color on a canvas did not come easy. I had to work really hard. A fellow painter told me that if I really wanted to study values or understand values, I needed to paint outside, and I sort of didn't really take that seriously for a while. But if you don't understand the value of color, you don't understand the color. So in this painting, I started out by putting the paint onto the canvas. So I spent basically most of one day, maybe a day and a half, putting paint on a canvas. And so that's what most people think is the act of painting. You're picking up paint off your palette, you're using tools to put it onto the canvas. You might call that an additive approach of color. I do a lot of scraping. More in the early days of my painting, I scraped into the canvas a bit more. But this type of painting, when I'm using the cement trowels, and when I get a lot of accumulated paint onto the canvas, I'm actually going through the layers of paint and revealing the paint that was applied a day and a half earlier. There's a simplification process there. There's a rediscovery of the paint that was put underneath. I like the quote of Miles Davis where he said that you lay down a note and that note is neither right or wrong. It can be corrected by the note after it. And I think it's the same way with my painting. If I lay down a color into the sky, it might initially be wrong. It just doesn't seem to work. But if I go back in with the cement trowels and the other like titanium palette knives and things to blend and pull up color from the bottom, I can get an effect that suits the way I think about the world. I stayed at Mammoth Hot Springs Hotel, and I could see this mountain from my hotel, but I could not see the lake from my hotel. And when I found the lake, the little pull-off in Yellowstone, if you walk 20 feet away from where I was, you can't see the lake. If you walk 10 feet past, you can't see the lake. This little lake is like, it's just sitting there, And I like the idea of some hidden, bit of beauty that's just kind of lurking in nature that you stumble along. And I really love a road or a river that turns and you can't see the end destination, it's obscured. To me, that poses a question. There's some kind of mystery there that's very intriguing. So I looked at the map, I tried to find the name of this lake. And it may be a little canyon or a little bit of the river. I'm not sure. But you can't see around the corner of the water. And I really love that. That's really mysterious to me. I want to get in my kayak and kind of go kayaking out there.
you.